Hi, my name is Megan Neiman, and this is my presentation on non-governmental organizations' role in disaster. What is a non-governmental organization? A non-government organization, or an NGO, is a general term for an organization made up of private citizens with no affiliation with the government of any nation other than the support from government sources in the form of financial or in-kind contributions. These groups are motivated by greatly varying factors, ranging from religious belief to humanitarian values. NGOs are considered national if they work in one country, international if they are based out of one country but work with more than 4 countries, and multinational if they have partners organizations in several countries. There are different types of NGOs, the first being a private voluntary organization. This is an organization that is nonprofit, tax exempt, and receives at least a part of its funding from private donor sources. Private voluntary organizations are NGOs, but not all NGOs are private voluntary organizations. The next type of non-governmental organization is an international organization. This is an organization with a global presence and influence. Although both the UN and the ICRC international organizations, only the ICRC could be considered an NGO. International law provides a legal framework under which these organizations can function. The next type are donor agencies. These are private, national, or regional organizations whose mission is to provide the financial and material resources for humanitarian relief and subsequent rehabilitation. These donated resources may go to other NGOs, other national governments, or to private citizens. Examples of donor agencies are the USAID, the European Community Humanitarian Organization, and the World Bank. The last type of NGO we will be talking about is coordinating organizations. These are associations of NGOs that coordinate the activities of hundreds of pre-registered member organizations to ensure response with maximized impact. They can decrease the amount of overlap and help distribute need to the greatest range of victims. Very important. Next, I will be talking about characteristics of non-governmental organizations. The first characteristic is their sovereignty and neutrality. Independence is advantage in situations where one national government does not want to be seen as needing the assistance of another national government, but is willing to accept the help of a neutral party. So this provides safety and autonomous aid for these countries. The second characteristic is that NGOs tend to be decentralized in their organization structure. So, for instance, they tend to work without definitive hierarchy and succeed through greater field level management. The third is that they are committed. NGOs are often involved not only in disaster relief, but also in the long-term recovery efforts that follow for months or even years. NGO employees are often so dedicated as to repeatedly putting themselves in harm's way to deliver aid to victims. Lastly, they are highly practice-oriented. They tend to improvise in the field as necessary and provide on-site training as a part of their regular procedures. They rely heavily on the individual experience of employees and volunteers. If the government cannot provide certain services, they may contract non-governmental organizations to provide these services. Governmental organizations offer their own services independent of efforts of the local, state, and federal government agencies. And they will often coordinate their efforts with some other organizations. Some of these key services are emergency shelter operations, search and rescue, mass feeding, emergency healthcare, and emergency communications. Some real-world examples include charities and church groups that may provide clothing assistance, help with building repairs, food and water, and counseling services without working through or for a federal agency. These are some examples of existing NGOs. So we have the International Committee of the Red Cross, or the ICRC. It is an independent, neutral organization ensuring humanitarian protection and assistance for victims of armed conflict and other situations of violence. Then we have Care USA, which provides aid and care packages and has projects focused on emergency relief and other social issues. Lastly, we have the International Association of Emergency Managers, which promotes principles and information while advancing the profession of emergency management. Next, we will be speaking about the value of relationships with NGOs and government parties, as well as the public. So the value of relationships with nonprofit agencies and other interest groups is so great that agency officials may cultivate strong friendships by sharing information, promoting the interest of friendly individuals and organizations, and even contracting with them for services. So the process of developing these close relationships is called cooperation, and many government agencies find it beneficial to engage in such activities. Next, we'll be talking about the Iron Triangle. So the Iron Triangle is a strong network of relationships as interest groups lend their support to the agency and to the legislative committees, and officials responsible for the agency's budget and programs and things like that. They provide information and are responsive to the interests of the groups and to the committees and officials. So then the committee members and staff find it an advantage to strengthen the agency and to support the interest groups. So these three working together create a close relationship and find all mutual benefits within a particular issue network, such as those within and outside the government interested in, for example, of floodplain management policies. Close relationships will develop over time. You might be wondering how these services and relief efforts all work together, specifically with FEMA. Some examples are the National Voluntary Organizations Active in Disaster, which help coordinate efforts of the national network of voluntary organizations during disasters. Then we have the International Association of Fire Chiefs, which promotes fire safety and encourages professionalization and training within the fire services. Next, we have Association of State Flood Plan Managers to implement FEMA's flood mitigation grant program and to encourage pre-disaster planning. Lastly, we have American Society of Civil Engineers, Civil Engineering Research Foundation, to encourage innovation in the construction industry and to reduce hazards. Thank you so much for your time and attention. I hope you enjoyed my presentation and learned something new about NGOs in the context of emergency management. Here are my resources. Thank you again.